Do you have constitutional questions? Get constitutional answers. We'll be answering your constitutional questions live, so get ready to call in now. Are you a prosecutor, law enforcement officer, or local government employee? Want to make sure you are executing the laws in a constitutional manner? Are you a city council member, township board member, or state legislator? Want to ensure the laws you pass are constitutional? Perhaps you're a citizen who wants to know the proper limits on government and the protections for your God-given liberties. Regardless of your role, call me, Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, with your constitutional questions during our live call-in show now at the phone number listed on the screen. And remember, together we can restore freedom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, everyone. I'm Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry. Welcome to this week's episode of Restore Freedom Weekly, where you get to call in and ask your legal and constitutional questions live and have them answered by me, a constitutional attorney. And just a reminder for those of you who maybe are a little bit newer to the channel, I am an attorney licensed to practice in 5 or 6 jurisdictions. I'm feeling a little off today. I don't even remember. Several jurisdictions, but that's clearly not 50. So I'm not licensed to practice law in every single state. And so there are sometimes where there's state-specific things that you ask that the best I can do is just kind of give you general guidance, very general, depending on how state-specific it might be. But I do encourage you to go ahead and call in and ask those constitutional and legal questions. So a couple of things of housekeeping nature. I always want to make sure, okay, good, thank you. I see somebody saying my audio is good. I always want to make sure because we have the strangest technological glitches that happen. It's never the same thing twice. It's always different things going on, and I was able to jump on here 45 minutes ago and see that we had some strange thing with my audio. My OBS was updated and the things were everything looked different, and audio wasn't set. It had set to, I don't know, default to something else. So I'm glad I was able to get that fixed and you guys can hear me today. There is a familiar name in the chat. My good friend, Bill here from Michigan. Let me see here. There we go. A little stuck. I wasn't able to move away. Anyway, okay. So, don't know what that was, but apparently there's something happening right outside my window in my yard, and it's kind of freaking me out because that was very loud. All right, so there's Lori put in a reminder in the chat that if you're going to ask a question just in the YouTube live chat, there's technological issues going on my end. If you're going to put any comments in the live chat as questions for me and not just discussion amongst each other, go ahead and put all caps, like Lori did in the example there. Put the word question in all caps, and then put your question after that in regular capitalization. And it helps so I can see it and read it, etc. And Blue Steel, I just wanted to tell you that I saw you jump in here. What on earth? It says you commented at 1:32 p.m. It's not even 1:32 p.m. Anyway, your comment showed up about an hour ago on my end, and I tried to say hello back to you, and I realized that one of the updates to OBS is that I can now not comment. I can't comment in my own live chat. Isn't that awesome? So I was going to say hello back to you and I couldn't. Um, anyway, also Lori, I don't know if you saw my, um, Lori, hopefully you can, you're hearing me fine now and you're able to see my text. I sent you a link. If you can put that in the live chat, since apparently I've lost all ability to comment on my own live chats, that would be great. Because I'm going to touch on that, what that link is for in just a second. So let me just scroll real quick because we have several of you in the chat already and just want to see. Okay, so we do have a question. What do you think about the judge's decision on payment in the... Judge's decision on payment. I don't know what case you're talking about. Yeah, like I'm totally in the dark on that. If you want to give me a little bit more specifics, I would be glad to give you some thoughts on that. And Bill, you asked, does a federal judge have any authority or jurisdiction over a sitting president? Okay, well, that is very interesting that you say that because in general, there's yes and there's no. Okay, so some of the attacks on President Trump's executive orders and things have been, oh, I'm losing all words today. Sorry, guys. Some of the attacks have been set aside or not allowed because they are saying, because the United States Supreme Court has said, well, you know, there's a separation of powers and something that is squarely within the executive authority and which gets a little sticky. And I'll touch on that in a second, but something that is squarely within the bounds of executive authority, the judicial branch should have nothing to say about it, except there's a couple of exceptions here. So number one, the executive branch, their job is to enforce the laws that we have. That's what the executive's job is. So if there is a law that is not constitutional, then that law should not be enforced. And so the judicial branch might step in to exercise authority over the executive branch in enforcing such a law if the law shouldn't be in place in the first place. Okay. Also, if the executive branch is doing something that's outside of the bounds of what the law actually allows the executive branch to do. So if it makes, gosh, I cannot think of really any good examples today. I'm sorry, guys. But if it makes a law that says you can't drive a semi-truck. I mean, it's a stupid analogy, but just roll with me. So if Congress passed a law that says you can't drive semi-trucks in the US, okay? I mean, that's obviously not a thing. It wouldn't happen, etc. But let's just say it's a blanket. That's just what the law is. However, the president and the executive branch tried to enforce it as though it applied to all trucks and not just semi-trucks, but pickup trucks or moving trucks or box trucks. That would step outside of the bounds of what the law actually said. And so the judicial branch should be getting involved to put the kibosh on that because it's stepping outside of the authority of the executive branch. So there's two main ways, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, where the executive branch is stepping outside of the bounds of what the executive branch is allowed to do. Number one is if they're enforcing a legislative enactment that is clearly unconstitutional. If it infringes on the rights of the people, or if it just simply steps outside of the bounds of what permission we have given the government to do, okay? And number two, if the president or the executive branch is trying to enforce a law, but doing so in a way that steps clearly outside of the bounds of what the law actually allows the government or the executive branch to do. So one way the law is good, but the how the president is enforcing it or the executive branch is enforcing it is bad. And in the other example, the law itself is bad, and so it needs to not be enforced. So those are the two main types of situations where, to answer Bill's question, where a federal judge would have any authority or jurisdiction over a sitting president. So, you have aspects of, I mentioned the cases that have come up since President Trump took office, where all the liberals are jumping on board with literally hundreds of cases, bringing lawfare, right? Litigation against the president to enforce, to stop him from enforcing his executive orders, implementing his executive orders. And so one of the things that the Supreme Court has utilized is, and it's not just new to this president, but it's just in the recent, in the current presidency issues that have been coming up. But this is, they've utilized the concept of, presidential immunity, and there's a privilege of the president to be able to, so basically if the president is doing what he's supposed to be doing within the bounds of the executive branch authority, then they don't want prosecutors, say a Fulton County district attorney in Georgia, trying to come after him for something while he was a sitting president, right? As long as it's within the bounds of what he's supposed to be doing. If a president goes out and orders a hit on somebody and that person is murdered, I mean, obviously the president is not above the law. The president needs to be held accountable for that. But in terms of, there's just a lot of gray area. And that's what they were prosecuting him in with the Georgia election interference case, which I've talked about in full and done videos specifically on that. But the elements there were all about it's just in that gray area where, I guess I could see how they're going to stretch the law and say that he was doing something wrong, etc. But really, it's just not one of those clear black and white situations. I mean, I think it's obvious right from wrong. No, it was not election interference, period. But anyway, so to answer you, Bill, sometimes yes and sometimes no. It just depends on the situation. And we do want the checks and balances. I mean, that's literally gets to the definition of checks and balances. If you have a situation where the judiciary can never step in when a president does something, then just because he's a sitting president, just because he's the current president and they can never step in, then you would not have checks and balances. Then you would have a rogue executive branch doing whatever they wanted to, and the people have no protections. So that, I think, is, it's good that there's, it's a yes and no kind of question. Okay, John Q. Public has a question. Shoot, it scrolled weird. Okay. How does this notion of public safety within a 10th Amendment of... I can't even read your question out loud because there's no states' rights and there's no police power. But anyway, I get why you're saying that. How does this notion of public safety within the 10th Amendment, states' rights policing powers, legal or lawful to circumvent the positive absolute guarantees of the Second Amendment? Okay, so for those of you who are new to the channel, John Q. Public has called in several times talking about charges that were brought against him relating to Second Amendment rights. And I'll say they're not Second Amendment rights. They don't come from the Constitution. They are God-given rights to defend yourself and be prepared to defend yourself, but they are enshrined or protected by the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and I believe in virtually every single state constitution as well. And some of them are verbatim. So first of all, my answer, so he's asking, how is it that, so the Constitution, the 10th Amendment of the Constitution has been interpreted to mean that there's states' rights and police powers. That's how it's been interpreted. That the 10th Amendment is written in such a way that, and let's go back, and I mean, it's not a very long amendment, right? So the 10th Amendment itself, very short, one sentence. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So let's be clear. So it's talking about powers. It's not talking about rights. That's the first thing. And that's an important distinction, because power is the, in this context, is talking about the authority to act. And rights are things that people have. Rights, the initial source of rights is the rights we have from God. Just by existing, just by our Creator creating us, we are given rights. So basic human rights. You have the right to breathe air. Okay. Anyway, so the 10th Amendment is not talking about rights. All the other amendments, essentially, there's a little bit of caveats, but virtually all the other of the 1 through 9 are talking about rights. And in fact, the first 10 amendments are known as the Bill of Rights, which is really stupid because the 10th Amendment is not about rights. It's about powers. And it's saying that there are powers that are delegated, because the U.S. government did not just start inherently having its own authority and power to act. It was delegated certain power through the U.S. Constitution. And so powers that are not delegated to the United States, nor prohibited by it. So there's, on the one hand, you have the United States Constitution providing a delegation of power to act for the U.S. government. And then on the other hand, you have all these rights that are enshrined and protected by the Constitution. And so you have prohibitions spelled out for what the government cannot do. It says, so aside from the powers not, the powers that are not delegated to the U.S. government, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, to each state amongst themselves, or to the people. That's a huge thing that always gets forgotten. Or to the people. So how do you reserve? Now it says reserved to the people. So the state governments themselves do not inherently have power over the people. No government inherently just has power over the people. So what is going on here? And this is all going to answer John Q. Public's question here about the Second Amendment. So it's powers that are reserved to the states. Now, reserved means these, if we didn't specifically give them to the U.S. government or prohibit the U.S. government from using them, there's this bundle of sticks, if you want to think about it that way. There's this bundle of sticks of power, right? And so you have all these powers. Okay. So we have all these powers, right? So we have these powers right here. We have given, not given, we have delegated. We still have the ultimate control and authority, but we have delegated the exercise of these powers to the U.S. government, okay? And whoever's calling in, just give me a second. I see that you're calling in. Give me just a second. I do want you to call in. I just want to finish answering John Q. Public's question. Okay, so you have those powers that are delegated to the U.S. government. Then you have all these other powers, and they are reserved to the states or to the people. Now, does this mean that all these necessarily are lumped into what's been known as the police powers and then just given to the states? No, that's where our court has completely lost its damn mind for the majority of the time that it's been in existence. These are powers that the people have. Now, how do they get into the hands of the states? The same damn way that the US government gets power. It gets its power through a delegation of power through the Constitution of the United States. But the states only get their powers through a delegation of power from their people through a state constitution. Without a delegation of power in the state constitution, there is no delegation of power, and the states don't have it. Those are then kept for the people. So let's say there's this other grouping of powers, and these ones are delegated to the state government through their state constitution. You still have whatever remaining powers are there, and they are reserved to the people. The people retain ultimate control and authority. Any power that's not specifically delegated to the government through a constitution has been reserved to the people. So with that being said, you have to have the context of John Q. Public's question is the Second Amendment. So first of all, is there a police power? No, nowhere in the Constitution does it allow for there to be this overarching police power to be exercised against we the people for our supposed benefit and good. Absolutely not. So there is no such thing, constitutionally speaking, as a police power. There is no such thing as states' rights. There is no right of the state. There are only exercised powers that are reserved in the US Constitution and then expressly provided by their state constitutions. That's the only way states get to exercise any power or authority at all. So then you have the Second Amendment. What is the Second Amendment doing? Is it giving us a carve out of a specific right? No, it is expressly acknowledging a right that already existed by simply being created, that we have the right to defend ourselves, and that is preserved and especially protected in the US Constitution in the Second Amendment, that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed at all. Okay, so neither the state government nor the federal government or a local government can infringe upon that right. It is already existing. Think about it this way. It's talking about infringing upon a right because the right already exists. It's not like it's a brand new right that's sprouting and emerging as brand new when the Constitution was written. It is a right that inherently already exists, and it's standing there and it's firm, and you cannot create new rules, regulations, laws, administrative regulations that are going to come in and try to trample and step all over that right that is a given. So, hopefully, that answers your question. But it is a positive absolute guarantee of the Second Amendment. I would agree with you on that. And so, yeah. Okay. So, oh man. Okay. So Lori doesn't have, Lori, what I wanted you to do, if you can, I don't see if you commented anywhere else. Can you tell me if you have access to our Google messaging? What is it called? Whatever, you know the one. Google Chat or something like that? Yes, Google Chat. Tell me if you have access to Google Chat, because, where did it go? You know what, I'm going to put this in Restore Freedom Team. Mike, if you can hear me. It's not working. Nothing is working. Come on now. Okay, there we go. Okay. I don't want it. I want to go back to the main conversation. Okay, here we go. All right, I just texted through our Google Chat, Mike and Lori, can one of you please pull this link and put it in the live chat, because it disappeared. I have no ability to post in the live chat. All right. So what I put in there, though, is something you guys already have access to, but I'm going to get to that in a second. I was just addressing the comment Lori made. Okay, so Article 1, Clause 6 of the state constitution Yeah. And so basically, when I was talking about just kind of John Q. Public offered a follow-up question. Article 1, Section 6 of the Michigan State Constitution is talking about, oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, Lori has access to this, just not my texting. Okay. So, the Michigan, he's asking about Article 1, Section 6 of the Michigan Constitution, which, if memory serves me right, is Article 1 in the Michigan State Constitution is the Declaration of Rights. And Article 1, Section 6 is a very simple one sentence clause, if you will, that every person has the right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself and the state. And it's state with a lowercase s, which just basically means the community. The greater community. So every person has the right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself and of the state. That is the Michigan State Constitution version of the Second Amendment. So he's saying, basically, how does Article 1, Section 6, it's not Clause 6, but Article 1, Section 6 of the Michigan State Constitution, how does that correlate or work with the state having these alleged police powers to control and infringe upon the Second Amendment? So even if we pretend the Second Amendment did not exist in the U.S. Constitution, each state has their own version of that. And so when you have the state constitution and you have a granting of power, delegation of power from the people of that state to the state government, then there is, of course, all powers not specifically reserved, or excuse me, not specifically delegated to the state government, are reserved to the people themselves, or to their communities, which they handle through municipal charters and things of that nature, which we'll talk about later. But it's also a granting of power or a delegation of power that is subsidiary to the specific rights that are enshrined in that Constitution. Okay. Hello, who am I speaking with?
Yes. Hello, this is Danny Spots.
Oh, yes, hi. How are you doing today?
Good. Well, obviously you hadn't caught up on the Afro Man case. Afro Man was the one who did the I Want to Get High song.
Okay,
The rapper. Okay. Well, that's who he is.
Okay.
And turned off his security cameras.
Hold on sorry. If you can hear me, hold on one second. If
Yeah.
you can hear me, because I lost audio for a second. Okay, you're back, but okay. So I'm sorry. Right when you told me who he was, I said okay, and then you cut out, so I did not hear anything about the case.
Okay. So the police had a warrant to search his house. Somebody reported he had a bunch of drugs, all this other stuff. So they did a no-knock raid and busted in his kitchen door. They searched his house, turned off his security cameras and everything. Well, with him being a rapper, he had gotten the videos that were on the security cameras and made songs on them, on the police officers that were involved. And he made a song called The Lemon Pound Cake, and I can't remember what the other one was. But the police officers ended up suing him because, it's defamation of their character, so they believed. Well, they went to trial with a jury, and the jury went completely on Afro Man's side. It was, the 12 or whatever jurors, went totally for Afro Man. Judge couldn't believe it. Yeah, he went through the paperwork several times. But in his judgment, at the very end, he split the court costs.
The Howe truck is back for being for Bungie.
For both the defendants and the plaintiff, Afro Man. Or the plaintiffs would have been the police, and the defendant would have been Afro Man. So he split the charge for the courts for all of that between the two. Now, there were several plaintiffs against the one defendant of Afro Man.
So he split the court costs? Is that what you're saying? Or are you talking about attorney's
Yeah,
fees? What are we talking about?
Everything, whatever charges were all on there. Because with Afro Man winning, his charges would have been going against the police officers, which were suing Afro Man, right? That's how it would normally go?
No. Okay. So there's a whole lot that's happening here that sounds like is being confused because civil and criminal are totally different things, right? So the original case where they had, if there was even a case, where they had the warrant and they went and searched at his house and all that stuff, that would have been through a criminal court. That's a criminal matter. So if there was a trial on the facts of that, then he would have been the defendant and the state would have been the party, or the federal government, whichever, governmental entity would have been the plaintiff, so to speak. And so if a defendant is found guilty, then court costs are assessed against the defendant in those situations. In a civil case, such as what you were talking about here, where the officers are then bringing some sort of defamation or similar type of civil tort case against him as a defendant in a civil case, when you have a when someone, so there's court costs, so it's usually a few $100s. Let's just say it's $500 in court costs. Then depending on how the case goes, you have other things that are considered costs of litigation that if they had won, then they potentially, not always, it depends on the cause of action and what statutes are involved. But generally speaking, when you win, you don't get all your court costs or your attorney's fees awarded to you unless the statute specifically calls for that. So if a statute specifically allows for costs to be awarded, then typically it's going to be attorney's fees. It's going to be the court costs, which is like the filing fees, which is, just a few $100s. You have maybe transcript fees if there's been appeals or things like that. You have deposition costs if you have to pay a court clerk or someone, a court reporter, to sit there and do a deposition. So you might have expert witness fees. So you have those kinds of fees that are, depending on the statute, sometimes deemed chargeable costs, that if you, as a plaintiff, if you win, you can get those costs reimbursed. So it's a huge difference. I'm going to mute you just for wait, that didn't work. Hold. Okay. I'm going to put you on hold on my end just because there's a lot of background noise, and I'm going to explain what I'm saying, and I'm going to unhold. So I don't think I'll be able to hear you speak for just a second, but I'm going to flesh this thought out and then hit that button, okay? Okay, so hopefully he can still hear me. But I want you guys to all hear me too, and it was just a lot of background noise and it was a little distracting. But so before I click back so you guys can hear further questions and we'll flesh this topic out a little bit more, it's a huge difference between saying something, saying court costs are awarded to be split evenly amongst the parties, because quite frankly, if we're just talking about strict court costs and that's it, and it's like the $300, $400, $500 we're talking about. If you're talking about, let's say 3 or 4 plaintiffs and you're talking about a defendant, but the defendant is a multimillionaire, I don't think anybody gives a crap about splitting a $200, $300, $400, $500 court cost charge. You know what I mean? But if we're talking about thousands and tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars of attorney's fees or depositions or expert fees or any of that other stuff, then it gets to be obviously a lot more involved. So with that being said, did you hear what I was saying when I pressed that hold button?
No, I can't. I'm on my phone, so it wouldn't let me flip back and forth.
Okay.
But I kind of understand what's going on, but he said by the dynamics of the case, he split the fee.
So without having a little bit more, a lot more, I'll just say a lot more specifics on seeing what a court order said and seeing the court's register of actions or something that shows exactly what happened and how this came about, it does seem off, because if a jury comes back and said, so sometimes you have elements, let's say maybe there's four things that are being brought in this suit, four elements, four claims that are being brought in a suit. Perhaps one of them makes it to the jury because it's really a jury issue, but the other ones, it might be that one of the parties wins on a legal basis. And if the law, let's say the parties don't disagree about the facts, they just disagree about the law, then that's something that if the system is working correctly, then that issue or those particular issues, they never make it to the jury because juries are not there to determine the law. They're there to determine the facts. So if the parties say we agree that there's no material dispute about facts at all, we just need the judge to determine the law, then it's up to the judge to make that decision. So it's possible. So it kind of goes into why I would need a heck of a lot more information, because let's say, there's just so much we don't know. So let's say it's possible that there were, let's say, 4 different elements that were originally brought in the complaint against the defendant, and say 3 of them never made it to the jury because there was a finding that was a legal finding that made it so that, yes, they won some sort of, they won on those claims. And the final claim was defamation, and the jury came back and said, absolutely not, there's no defamation here, we rule in favor of the defendant. Then in that situation, I could see where it would be appropriate for the splitting of costs to take place if there was a win and a loss. So it's hard to say, because without having those facts, if there was just one claim and the one claim went to the jury and the jury said we find in favor of the defendant, and there were no legal issues that would negate that finding of fact, then I would say absolutely it is bizarre and wrong for any judge to order a defendant who won, or any party who won, to share in the, well, I'll say defendant for a defendant. It would be wrong for them to order a defendant who won to pay any share of costs associated with a case that was brought against them. It is fair for a plaintiff to have to pay their own costs unless a statute specifically allows them to recover those costs if they win. Because our system of government, the person who brings the case has to pay, basically.
Right. And they should have, the weird part is they had so many officers that were on this case. So Selena Afroman is one case. And then the judge determined that he was cutting it in between both of them. Not equally amongst all that were involved in the suit, but defendants and plaintiff. One half went to them, one half went to the other. And he won, so he really shouldn't have had to pay anything.
Yeah, and so that's where I would just caution you to not look at news media about it, but find the actual judgment. In fact, if you can find the actual court order that closes out the case and talks about, all the, what's going on, and you want to send it over to me, I would be more than happy to look at it, because I might be able to find something in there that makes this make a little bit more sense, and not just that some judge doesn't know what he's doing.
Go into YouTube and go into the Watchdog Media, I think it is. The case is out of Ohio, I believe. If not, it's Indiana. It's right around Cincinnati area.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't have the time to do that. I'm not going to go chasing down a case. But
when you do, it's totally funny more than anything else.
Yeah, but if you do find that and you want to send it over to me, I'd be more than happy to clarify in our next episode what I saw with that, and if it's just a judge that doesn't know what the hell they're doing, or if it's actually a legitimate reason, behind it all. So, yeah.
All right. It was just a weird case, and weird how it came out.
Right.
And to be the winner and have to pay half of all the fees, and you're one against, I don't know, there were like 5 or 6 officers.
Yeah.
That were all in like a class action suit against him. For lack of better words. I know that's not what it is. Anyway. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your, I'll see if I can pull it up and I'll get it emailed over to you.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Catherine. You too.
All right, so John Q. Public, you're saying that you're trying to call in, but it keeps dropping. All I can say is I know that in the past, that the issues have mostly been on your end with the phone calls, so I don't know what to do about that. I'm not seeing any attempts on my side. Usually, I at least see that you're trying to call in, and it disconnects when I try to answer. But I'm not seeing that today. So, okay, and. Okay. And then John Q. Public, it's not a question, but it's kind of a follow-up to the discussion we were having earlier. He says Article 4, Clause 4 of the federal constitution states that America is, the United States of America is a republican form of governance, not a democracy. And that is something that I have talked about many times before in various speeches and videos, and certainly here. But yes, Article 4, Clause 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. So that is a very important thing that we remember there, because a republican form of government is what I was talking about earlier when I was hammering on the fact that we the people retain the ultimate control and authority over all matters. And that is what a republican form of government is, where you elect representatives to do the daily tasks of government, to do the daily functions of government, but the people retain the ultimate control and authority. So let's see, John Q. Public. Don't we, the people, interpret the Constitution or laws to what they mean to us, we, the people, and not a bunch of individuals that wear a black robe costume? No. Because I would say it's not really anybody's job to interpret anything. I am of the persuasion, I guess, a lack of better words off the top of my head, but that, because it's more than just an opinion. But if a law is so vague as to need interpretation, it's not constitutional. All laws need to be very simple and straightforward and clear and to the point, not the way that attorneys typically write things, quite frankly. They shouldn't be verbose. They shouldn't be wordy and, full of complex, often contradictory clauses and parentheticals and subsections and all the rest. It should be simple and straight and to the point. And so there should not be interpretation of the law, because if a law needs interpretation, that's not a good law. Because really, if you have to interpret the law, then you are then it's applying differently, and that evokes issues with, for example, the Equal Protection Clause, right? Because you can't equally protect people with the law and under the law if you are applying it differently in different situations, if you're interpreting it differently in different situations. So that's something that it's an essential element of a truly constitutional law is that it's clear and doesn't need interpretation. And quite frankly, and we've talked about this before, but judicial authority has nothing to do with interpretation. There's no interpretation, none of that appears in the definition of what judicial authority is. The judicial authority we've talked about before, simple and to the point blank, is the ability to decide on a particular dispute that's before the court. So if you have a dispute between two parties, and the court steps in and they make a decision and render a verdict, render an opinion, an order, as to that specific dispute with those parties, that's exactly what their job is. It is not to interpret anything, because then they essentially step into the secondary legislature. So you have the first level legislature that writes the laws. And then you have the secondary legislature, the judiciary, that interprets them to add their own nuances to things. And that's not the way that it's supposed to be. So it just jumped a huge bunch on me. Sorry, guys. Okay, so, okay. Yes, okay, so I see Lori shared that link 20 minutes ago in the chat. Please check that out. I don't know. Yeah, I can't. Does it let me do anything? I can't do anything. I can't like it. I used to be able to like comments. I can't do anything. So please check that out. And the reason why is because I mentioned this in the last show, and I said I didn't quite have it finished before, to share out before the last show. I have had a very abysmal response. Very few of you have actually responded to that survey. I'm looking for hundreds of people because these videos themselves get hundreds of views. But even my newest one from a few days ago has, I don't know, what is it? 4,700 views last I checked on YouTube, and has views on Facebook and views on TikTok and whatever, which is still nothing. I mean, I'm shadow banned. It's nothing like the hundreds of thousands of views my videos used to get and in just a few days on even the most boring of topics. So if you haven't checked out the video that I talked about the current state of the law on carrying a gun in Florida, check out that 2.5-minute video. You know me. So if I can put together the state of the law in 2.5 minutes on carrying a gun in Florida, then that's amazing. It's pretty succinct. But I even have half of it is devoted to the comments from our sheriff here in Volusia County, Florida, and what he was saying at a press conference a week ago. Anyway, so fill out that survey though, because I want to know your thoughts on things. I'm trying to make sure that what I'm doing, my whole goal is to help you guys. I mean, that's why I'm doing this show right now. I want to help you guys in your own fight for freedom. So if you are someone who is fighting, you find yourself fighting against your local school board, you're a soccer mom, and your local school board is constantly making decisions to make it more challenging to homeschool your children, or to have a say in their curriculum, or to implement vaccine mandates, or whatever the case may be. They have masking mandates or anything like that. And you are fighting your local school board on all the ways that they're implementing this stuff. Then you have a different set of priorities than, say, someone like John Q. Public, whose main right that he is focused on is Second Amendment advocacy. I want to know what issues are most important to you guys, and I want to then, because I have not been able to be as effective with my advocacy as I would like to be. And there's just so much, because the government does so much wrong on a regular basis at all levels of government every single day. And we, the people, need to reel them back in. So, of course, I'm passionate about every single sentence in the Constitution, because everything matters in there. Because, you read it as a whole, you read it individually, every single aspect in there serves its own purpose and is important. So it's hard for me to let go, say, for example, of criminal defense rights. You have your Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendment rights that, are essential. Eighth Amendment, you have essential rights in there that I myself have been, I've had those rights trampled and abused by the court system. And so those things, I'm passionate about those things. But at the same time, a lot of people are not necessarily facing criminal prosecution. And so, you need to figure out, well, what is the most important? And the way that I see it, I want to focus on the top 3 most important topics. What's important to you guys? You'll see in the questionnaire, I've kind of asked the question in 2 different ways. I've asked you to name your first most important topic, second, and third. And then I've asked, I've narrowed it down, to like the 9 of the most important topics to me at this stage in my career. And I'm asking you to to give them 1 star to 5-star review, which, 5 stars, it is the most important. It is very important to you. And so I need you guys to fill that out and help guide my practice so that I'm best able to help you in your own fight for freedom, because I certainly can't do things by myself. I'm here to enable you and empower you to do what you need to do to fight within your community for freedom, to fight at the state level, to fight at the national level, to fight at your local level, your county level, your city, whatever. I want to empower you to do what you need to do in your communities and to fight on the issues that are important to you. So please help me out by answering that survey. And the link is something that's been in the chat. I don't know, Lori, if you want to share it again, but she shared it a little while ago. And if you missed that link, it's been shared on my website. It's been shared on all the social media platforms that we post to. Go ahead, click that link. It'll take you 5 minutes or less to fill this thing out. And I do ask for your email address and your first name and your state, because number one, I need to make sure that you're not spamming me, because I have had especially my website and the newsletter and everything just get inundated with spam in recent months. And so I'm trying to weed that out. I want to have this be real and legit. And if I start seeing a series of things that look a little off, like, wow, that's not what I would expect, I'm going to just investigate a little bit more and go, oh, okay, but these are people that have contacted me, or these are people that I've seen in the live chat or whatever. Right. So, but if it's somebody that's, somehow gotten a hold of the link, but they're a huge liberal, they hate the Constitution, they hate me, and they're just trying to throw me off track, I'm going to try to weed that information out. So, anyway, with that being said, I'm looking for, so, hey, this is a public service. I don't know if you're still in the chat. Nice to see you. And hello, Mr. Catherine Henry. Thank you for joining the chat. Okay, and then Lori tells me he won't be able to hear me. So, yeah, I was just hoping there was a way I could mute him and he could still hear me. Well, yeah, I don't know. I turned off the mute. It was hold. Yeah, whatever. It was a different option. I was trying something, but, of course, now you tell me that it won't work because I didn't see that at the time you posted that. Okay. I don't want to split a nickel with those dirty cops. And yeah, this is a public service talking about that court case. You're right. If he's winning, I wouldn't want to split a nickel with them either. But number one, there's the practical side of things. Are we talking about, in the grand scheme of things, there is no, there would be no court record saying he has done anything wrong. So that's a win by itself, right? But also it's just the splitting of a few $100s for someone who has millions and he doesn't care, and it would, cost him more to fight it. I mean, I'm just trying to think practically speaking, right? But also the bigger concern that I would have is just, I feel like I'm missing pieces to the puzzle because, there might be more elements of findings where there is, sorry, I was just hearing stuff outside again, and I didn't think it was all that windy, but anyway, I would like to know more. I'd like to know more about and see I don't care about articles. I want to see the actual court orders that, ordered the costs, because in theory, it should go into why. It'd be better yet if somebody was able to get their hands on there's a lot of stuff rolling around in my backyard right now, and I didn't think we were having a hurricane. So sorry, guys, I keep getting distracted. I'm not even seeing it because my curtain's closed. I'm hearing it. But anyway, so I would love to see the Register of Actions, or whatever they call it. And I think you said the case was out of Ohio, where it shows this hearing was held on this day, and plaintiff filed this, defendant filed this, judge entered this order, whatever. That's typically, there's something called like a Register of Actions where it's showing all the things, all the steps that have happened in a case. I would love to see that on this case, because that would help to really paint the full picture, especially if there had been a prior conclusion to possibly other elements or charges of the complaint. So anyway, okay. So I'm just checking here to see if I have any more questions. Why does it do this? I'm really frustrated that this thing just doesn't work. And that part didn't get any better, but okay. DJ Plas says, I'm super surprised that you have not heard about this case. In some regards, I guess I'm surprised about it too, because I'm always looking for stuff on court cases. I have my Google feed on my phone that just gives me random news stories, gives me all kinds of court case information. I try to read stuff that does come through mainstream media to then go back and trace the source documents, right? I'm signed up for all kinds of things to get every time there's a new U.S. Supreme Court decision that comes down, or a Michigan Supreme Court decision, or a Florida Supreme Court decision, or, there's stuff through the Michigan bar where it's, even Court of Appeals cases, things like that. I try to stay up on all of that as much as possible. So, although the other hand, there's a new court case every single day in every jurisdiction. There's 100 new court decisions that are made all the time. So it's a little hard to keep up on everything. And that's all the more reason why I want you guys to help me narrow down that, with that survey, narrow down my practice areas, because if it looks like by and large, right now, things are neck and neck, and it's like, well, that's not helpful. I can't focus on 9 different things and be super effective at what I do. I've been doing that for quite a while because I'm so passionate about all of the Constitution, but I need to narrow down some more. And so could you imagine if if it's very clear that let's say Second Amendment rights and government accountability and government accessibility are the top 3 issues for you guys, and it's just clear that is, that those are the ones, I could be so much more effective, because even that is huge. Those topics alone, any one of those topics is huge and would have tons of court cases, statutes, bills being introduced in legislatures, policies and resolutions and all kinds of other nonsense being enforced at, local and state levels. There'd just be a lot to still talk about even then. So anyway, so no, I guess in that sense, I'm not surprised that I haven't heard about this case. So anyway, yes, T-Mobile does suck. I used to have them many years ago. Okay. Okay. All right. So I am. Okay. So DJ Plast, I'm not sure. It wasn't a question written as though it was to me. So I'm not sure if this was to me or not, or just part of the conversation that you're having with Lori and others in the chat. But you said, are you telling me that cops have no skin in the game? And I guess I'm not even going to address that because I don't know. It seems like, are you talking about, because you guys were talking in the chat more about the criminal side of the case and not the civil side. So I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So you guys are going back and forth. Okay. So I'm trying to be careful that it doesn't. Okay. John Q. Public asks a question. What specifically are the limitations regarding violence in free speech in the First Amendment, referring to the female in the recently prosecuted and convicted, referring to, I don't know what female was recently prosecuted or convicted by the DOJ. So, and thank you, Lori, for sharing that link again. Please, 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 please make sure that you guys are all, share, you filled out that survey. Tell me what's important to you, and you share this channel, share the resources, share the website, and share that survey to other freedom fighters that you know. Please do me that favor, because I do everything here for free to help all of us work together to be best enabled, to have the tools at our disposal. And anyway, it would mean the world to me if you guys would help further that mission. So the question regarding, so John Q. Public is asking about what limitations there are in violence in free speech. So generally speaking, the court, the United States Supreme Court, and quite frankly, all other courts have held that, yes, we have the right to free speech, but there are repercussions for certain speech. So for example, if you know damn well that there is no fire, and you walk into a crowded movie theater and you scream fire just to create a stampede and then people get hurt, they can sue you civilly for damages that they sustained because of your little prank. In certain circumstances, there might be criminal charges that would come out of that because you created a public safety risk for your own amusement. And those kinds of things make sense. Those kinds of limitations make sense. As far as violence, I don't know about the specifics of the case that you're talking about there, but as far as violence goes, if you are threatening violence, if you say to someone, I'm going to get you. I have weapons and I know how to use them and I know where you live. And, you say something of that nature that makes it concrete and tangible. Definitely there should be limitations against that because there's no place in a civilized society for, threatening other people with physical violence. You have the right to defend yourself and you have the right to defend your family and, your home and things like that. But because you don't like somebody's stance on something, there's a lot of judges that, as an attorney, that I've seen that have ruined people's lives with their decisions, but they don't deserve to have physical violence perpetrated against them. What they deserve is to be held personally responsible if they've stepped outside of the bounds of their judicial authority. They deserve to be at the very least, if they didn't really step outside of the bounds of their judicial authority, but they made some really bad decisions. Let's say in a divorce case, they gave custody to one parent and instead of both parents, and both parents are, good, solid parents, but whatever the case is, right? There's bad decisions all the time. Then yeah, that judge should be voted off the bench. In the next election, there should be a new judge put into place. There should be, depending on what the judge has done, the consequences, there should be consequences for bad actions, but they should be according to what they've done. And I've just scheduled a bunch of new freedom fighting tools that I post on Fridays. I scheduled some to, I think it's about 3 and 4 weeks from now, on judicial accountability and what can you do if a judge has done something that is wrong, made the wrong decision in some way. So I talk a little bit about that in the freedom fighting tools that I have to share. And I plan on doing some videos specifically on those freedom fighting tools to kind of go walk you through some of the websites and things that I was sharing, especially if you're in a state outside of Florida and Michigan, because I shared the specific links for Florida and Michigan in those because I had those at at my disposal. But I want them to be able to be utilized by, those of you in Texas or Pennsylvania or Colorado or California or wherever. So anyway, so that would be really important to me that you guys fill out that survey. And do take a look at all those. If you guys haven't already signed up for the newsletter, or maybe you did a while ago and, you noticed that I wasn't doing much of a newsletter while I was going through the throes of the cancer surgery and everything, sign back up for that newsletter because it is a weekly newsletter. It goes out every Sunday or Monday, and it has the posts for that week. So you get the links to whatever videos that I have shared with the title and the description. So you can go, oh yeah, that looks like one I want to watch, or gosh, I don't, it's just the weekly show and none of those topics were of interest to me or whatever. That's fine. At least it's all in one place. The freedom fighting tools are in there. The links to that week's State Constitution Saturday link is in there. God and the Constitution, we're talking about, okay, sorry, hold on guys. Something is... I'm not entirely convinced that there's not a human being outside on my property that shouldn't be here. So I'm a little nervous about that because I'm trying to finish up what we're doing here and this conversation and not paying attention to that. So anyway, anyway, utilize all of that, right? In the newsletter, I have the links to our Wednesday wellness information that I've been sharing. That came out of conversations and questions that people had for me from my personal Facebook page. And I wanted to share out the research that I had been doing. Whatever else is on there, I don't even remember what we do. Throwback Thursdays, I've been talking about important previous United States Supreme Court cases, and I talk about what the case is and, what it stood for, and then either, hey, so this is how we get to these decisions today, or, this is bad, and here's why it's bad, or something of that nature to get you to think. So anyway, I don't want to find Bigfoot roaming around my backyard. And my husband and I, and none of our kids have big feet. So it wouldn't be anybody here. Hello, this is Catherine. Who am I talking with? I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that was John Q. Public because there are issues with us connecting via the phone. So anyway, if you haven't already checked out the newsletter recently, if you're not currently on the list, it gives you one quick snapshot of all the posts, all the links, all the stuff I've shared, new court cases that I've found information on, that kind of thing. You can sign up for the newsletter anywhere at any page on my website at the bottom. Try it again. So that I'm going to just say that is John Q. Public because that's the issues that we have when he tries to call in. Okay. Yes. And Jay Curvitt, I appreciate you did fill out that survey. I think you were like the second person that filled it out, first or second person, somebody. Anyway, let me see here. Okay. So apparently I really made people mad with my comment. I'm not saying it's right for the judge. Okay. So let's go back to the Afro Man case just for a second. And we're talking about how the jury found in favor of Afro Man in this defamation case. And yet the judge still ordered him to split the costs evenly between him and the plaintiffs who brought the case against him. I said, well, if he's a multimillionaire and all we're talking about is simply the actual court costs, which is just a few $100s, then it's not a big deal. I'm not saying that it's not right or that a judge should do that. I was just talking about it from a practical standpoint. If I were in his shoes, would I be that concerned about it? And in that regard, I wouldn't be that concerned about it. But I have a feeling there's more to the case that we still haven't, unfolded here in this conversation. And so I would like to have that actual information on the case itself. But I'm not saying that makes it okay for the judge to do that. I'm just saying if I were in his shoes, I would look at, picking my battles. And is that a battle that I would pick? I mean, quite frankly, if I was a multimillionaire, yeah, I would use my money to straighten up our legal system and hold people accountable. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Miss Henry. Finally, fourth time's a charm.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you're able to join us. So what is the topic that you called in about today?
Okay, Miss Henry, this is John Q. Public in the chat. So what I was referring to specifically is about the limitations of violence having to do with the female. It was a prosecution that was done in Texas by the DOJ. And what she was reiterating was the seditious sixth gang that had said about, that they had their wives threatened because, the punishment for sedition, treachery, treason is for, is a capital offense, it's death. And she was speaking against what they had done and said, yes, they need to be punished by death for what they did. Well, she got prosecuted and convicted of that because she encouraged that President Trump do go forth with prosecutions against them and have them charged and have them convicted and punishment, the capital offense of death. If it's the law that it's a capital offense and the law says it's death, I don't understand how that's inciting violence or threatening violence. If the lawmaker is committing a capital offense and the punishment is death, I don't understand how that's threatening violence. That's what the law is. She was just reiterating the law again.
Yeah, so based on the facts as you've just shared them with me, yes, that would not be inciting violence whatsoever. I disagree with capital punishment for various reasons that I won't talk about today, but in law school, I had a death penalty seminar and it as an independent study, and I went in deep on the cases. And even if you just want to say it from a taxpayer perspective, death penalty is bad for the taxpayer because of the extra layers of appeals that they get, the more expenses and costs and things of that nature. And boy, Governor DeSantis has been signing death warrants here like they're going out of style. I mean, for cases that people were found guilty of murder and whatnot, in the 80s and 90s. And so they're finally exhausting their final appeals and facing actual death penalty for their crimes. But at that point, it's like, okay, so 40 years of appeals and court costs and just all that stuff. It's just, anyway, so I'm not going to go down that road specifically, but that's a different argument. The fact is there are states where there are statutes, whether it be a federal statute, whether it be a state statute or whatever. There are statutes on the books that for certain crimes, the penalty may be up to the sentence of death. And so if somebody is advocating for a person to be investigated and prosecuted and for the court system to do its job and for that person to be, found guilty and then for them to receive the fullest punishment under the extent of the law, and they're not out there advocating for people to take the matter into their own hands, right? Then there's nothing wrong with that. That is not advocating violence. That is not inciting violence. It's not violent at all. So, I don't know if I'm missing something else with that case, but it seems extremely absurd to me that there would have ever even been prosecution. I mean, that there would have ever been a criminal complaint or a warrant, an arrest warrant ever issued for such a thing, let alone an entire case brought forth, let alone a conviction that stands. So
yeah, she's a well-known I guess you call him an influencer. She's a YouTuber. She's on TikTok, and she's one of these people that reviews the news and that kind of thing. And she's like an ultra, MAGA conservative type person. She's really on the far right thing. But anyways, she watched this and she reviews news and everything like that. And what happened was she put it out there, yes, that President Trump was absolutely right when he called for that these individuals need to be investigated and need to be convicted, and that the punishment for treason and sedition and that kind of thing is death. And this has actually happened in our country's history before, where we've had duly elected public officials that breached the public trust, and there have been public hangings. There have been, people's heads chopped off at the guillotine, and it was done publicly to, basically ensure the public, listen, we're not going to have individuals in elected office that are going to violate your trust because they do this. This is the ultimate punishment for what they do. So she was just reiterating what the history of our country was and what the law was in the past and what needs to be done now as far as President Trump is concerned with the seditious six, saying that, go against what the president's orders are and military don't obey. That's all she was doing, and she got convicted of it.
Yeah. So again, based on the information that I have, there's no crime there whatsoever. Anybody who's advocating for the law to be followed as it is is not advocating for a crime. They're advocating quite the opposite. So there should not be any kind of prosecution at all for someone who's advocating for the law to be followed. Now, it's possible that the law, I'm not saying that law, but it could be that law, but any law, it's possible that a law is on the books that is totally unconstitutional and is against, basic common tenets of humanity, decency, whatever, and that it should be abolished, that it's, blatantly unconstitutional. But even so, that doesn't mean that advocating for keeping it or for enforcing it means that you should be criminally liable. Unless, I guess I would say, I think there should be crimes where government officials are held personally responsible for advocating for the the unconstitutional exercise of authority where it's infringing upon the rights of others, right? But it's a different story. It's not what we're talking about here. So anyway, yeah. So
well, we do have a law like that here in Michigan, and it is it is a public official that is violating the public trust or misconduct in office, malfeasance or misfeasance in office. But it's rarely prosecuted here in Michigan. But there are a lot of elected officials, and even those that are not elected, those are appointed or judges or even police officers that statute could be used against because it's a malfeasance or misfeasance, misconduct in public office. And but it's rarely prosecuted. I don't know why, but it would hold our elected officials and public officials and those appointed in positions more accountable. But like I said, it's rarely prosecuted, and it's really a conviction is done.
Yeah, and essentially what there just needs to be better statutes on the books. There needs to be more teeth. That's one of the things that I think I would like to do. If, let's say, for example, you guys, and by the way, did you fill out the survey?
Yes, I did fill out the survey, and I obviously I used my real name and not the avatar name. But yeah, I did fill it out. And to answer your question, my concerns would be primarily, like I said, the second. I would say the 14th and then the first. That in that order. And I said the 14th, and I was the one who primarily put this in there as the right to travel by any manner of conveyance that you wish. And I believe that should be unregulated, and it is done and taxed and, permitted and licensed and all these other nonsenses that go along with your absolute guarantee right to travel. Not only interstate, but interstate travel. And, look at flight. That's one of the things right there. I understand we have to worry about, terrorism and that kind of thing like that. But, trying to fly now in this country has become absolutely unbearable.
Yeah.
It's overly regulated.
So,
let's hold terrorists accountable, but let's not make everybody face the consequences for terrorism.
So for those of you who have not gone to the survey yet, the three things that he's talking about would be addressed in my survey because I ask about Second Amendment. I ask about First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, etc. And then I also ask about abolishing administrative rules and regulations, which the FAA, all that. There would not be an FAA because it's an administrative regulation or an administrative agency. So anyway, I would ask that you guys go ahead and fill that out. Well, the reason I wanted to make sure that you did fill it out, John Q. Public, but in fact, I had a totally different train of thought and I'm starting to lose it. But really, if people by and large pick governmental accountability as one of the top three things for me to focus on, one of the things I envision me doing is creating a series of statutes that would be how do I want to, I'm losing all my words, but like a template for somebody to bring to a legislator to sponsor in Michigan, and somebody could bring it to a legislator to sponsor in Florida, and somebody, and so everybody could have these as like, as a template to bring and have as state statutes, or perhaps even municipal ordinances, depending on what this particular, draft of a bill would have. But basically, put together language of what a statute should look like for judicial accountability, or if any government official has done wrong. Let's say, like you pointed out, Michigan and other states a lot of the times do have statutes on the books talking about malfeasance or misfeasance in office, but they're rarely utilized. They're rarely prosecuted out. And that is not likely to change. So what can we do about that? Well, there should be something in such a statute that talks about, in the event that a prosecutor, any appropriate prosecutor with jurisdiction does not take action on it within 30 days of being notified, then the public has the right to begin the process. Of course, they would have to go through all the same steps, right? They'd have to have probable cause for, an arrest warrant or whatever the case may be. But if those steps are approved, then there should be it's not a civil case. There should be no court costs to that person. They would just be doing the legwork to make sure that it gets done. But there needs to be stuff like that fleshed out and give real teeth to statutes. Those of you who are big on freedom of the press, freedom of speech, government accessibility, if that's one of the top contenders, then I see myself putting together a state statute for people to advocate for, having enacted in each state, where it's addressing the true accessibility of government information. What information should be put directly on municipal websites, for example, and state websites without people even asking for it? What information should be available where, it's, how should it be? If a state, for example, I never thought I would say this, but there's several statutes that have come to my attention that are better in Michigan, of all places, than in Florida, the supposedly free state. Freedom of information is not freely flowing down here in Florida. So in Michigan, there are certain deadlines and timeframes and consequences, and it's a little bit more clear about what happens if a municipality or governmental entity does not they deny a Freedom of Information Act request or something of that nature, what you can do as a person. It's a little bit better there. There's at least something to go on. Here, it's basically, there's no time frames, there's no deadlines, there's no real ability for somebody to bring some sort of cause of action in front of a court and have any, chance of succeeding in that, because it's so nebulous, it's so vague about what the obligations of a municipality or other governmental entity is in providing the information that's supposedly for we the people to maintain ultimate control and authority over our government. So anyway, that's why it's
Ms.
super
Henry,
important.
Can I give you a prime example, at least here in Michigan, of a prime case of malfeasance, misfeasance, and misconduct in office? Is right now, if you're familiar with what Jocelyn Benson, the Michigan Secretary of State, has done concerning election integrity and election law here in Michigan, she has committed at least 8 felonies, and she's been found guilty on them, and Dana Nesson doesn't impose a sentence and won't enforce a sentence upon her, and she's still going to run for governor now here in the state of Michigan. This is a prime example of an individual that gets away with it. Now, is it a Democrat covering for another Democrat? Absolutely, and this is the way they work. But this is an example that people have been fighting here in Michigan about election integrity and election law violations that Jocelyn Benson has done, and the state attorney general does nothing about this whatsoever.
Right. Yes, that is a good example. And that's just too much to start talking about at this hour. I could talk for days about.
No, I was just trying to give an example of what people are concerned about as far as misconduct in office. And this is one of the things right here. Now, does that require a death penalty such as sedition or treachery? No, but it does require accountability to we the people.
Yes.
And this is what I was saying before about a judge in a black robe costume doesn't do anything to enforce the law and allows the, state attorney general not to enforce a penalty and just lets it go to the wayside, even though that there is plenty of evidence to gain the conviction and doesn't do anything about it because of party politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it. I'll get off my soapbox.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, bye-bye.
So, Lori, if you can reshare that, somebody, Lone Star was asking, where's the survey? You can find it on my website. If you go to restorefreedomkh.com/updates, you'll be able to see a couple of the recent posts in the last week have been about filling out that survey. So you find it there. You can find it on my YouTube channel in my recent posts. You can find it on the Facebook page, Twitter, LinkedIn, Telegram, Google, on Google Maps, my location, you can find that. I'm not sure, you have in all capital letters question, and does Catherine have a survey? And then one of those weird emojis, whatever. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. This is a public service. So it seems like it's for me, but I don't know exactly what's going on with that. So anyway, so I ask you guys to go ahead and fill out that survey. Like I said, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, but you want to stay informed on the most recent stuff that I'm sending out there every week, it's a pretty short newsletter that gets sent out. It's probably a 5 to 10 minute read, unless you want to, take advantage of any of the links or videos or things like that I have linked in the email. But please go ahead and utilize those resources. And like I said, survey again, restorefreedomkh.com/updates will have the most recent posts, and you'll be able to see the posts that I have. But if you look in the YouTube live chat right now, and I will try to remember to put the link for the survey in the description of the video at the end of this. When I close it out, I'll update the description of this video, as well as when we post this episode to our podcasting platforms. I'll try to remember to put the link for the survey in the description there as well. So you're blowing my mind. This is a public service. I'm not sure what all the emojis are for. Anyway, yes, and as Lori is also pointing out, we need all the support we can get. So if you can hit that like button to this particular video, hit the like button to the channel, to the Facebook page, whatever platforms that you're on, hit the share button, tell your friends, family, coworkers, people at your church about it. If you have a group of people that would want to know more about it, and you want to get a small stack of my business cards to hand out to people, let me know. We have that. You can buy any of the Restore Freedom things that we have at cost, and actually, quite frankly, oftentimes less than what it cost us to had it made up and then send out to you. You can go to restorefreedomkh.com/shop. If you want to financially support us, either on a regular basis or just on a one-time thing, whether it's a $5,000 donation to really give us an impactful few months here to really get some things rolling, or it's just all you can do is skip one of those fancy coffees and you have $5 or $10 to donate just one time. Anything helps, and you can do that at restorefreedomkh.com/donate. I would greatly appreciate any and all of that. Keep us on your prayer list, health-wise, family-wise, just for the mission itself. But do fill out that survey if you haven't done so already, so I can make sure to best cater and focus my practice in ways that would best help you in your fight for freedom. So with that being said, I will invite you guys to join me, I believe, because of having 5 Tuesdays this month. It's not going to be in 2 weeks, but instead in 3 weeks on April 14th, the second Tuesday of the month. So we'll be back, as always, on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month at noon Eastern Standard Time. And in the meantime, I do plan on getting out, hopefully I'll be getting out producing and publishing some shorter videos of the 10-minute or less variety on a variety of topics. And as always, if you have any information on a court case and you want me to be able to speak intelligently about it, don't feel hesitant to send that to me. Go ahead and send me an actual court opinion or court order. I don't like articles. I'm not going to waste my time reading articles about things because it's often not got the most accurate information. But if you have an actual court case, the actual orders from the court, etc., you can send that to me directly, and I'll do my best to take a look and be prepared to talk about it in our next episode. So with all that being said, I hope you found today's episode useful and informative and, at the very least, entertaining for you. So thanks so much for your support and for joining us all the way into the end. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks, guys.
Our work to restore freedom would not be possible without support from people just like you. From the various software and hardware needed to the legal research materials, every dollar you can donate helps. Make sure to like and share this video too. And remember to follow and subscribe and click that notification button. Together, we can restore freedom.